Death, dying, and sadness conclusion. The nastiness of the language and the descriptions of the social worker, counselor, required appointment have to do with cortisol, have to do with neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, the body, brain, and mind. Disrupting psychological cognition, disrupting peace, calm, and especially important right now with the coronavirus pandemic, relaxation. Not having a person disrupt health, not being confused and in disarray, and instead being maybe slower, more attentive to breathing. And these are my explanations, but what disturbs me so much about this reoccurring difficulty with the mental health organization, and especially a social worker, has to do with what I'm doing in my time. With cancer in remission and uncertainty in the future. And then how simple and how fast and how quick a health organization, and it could be any health organization, arrives with the phone call, arrives with a face, and does the same work silently, quietly, and for most people, unconsciously, seemingly. I've always stayed safe because of cortisol. And probably why I've never been a drug addict. I don't like being freaked out. I don't like staring at myself in the camera. I don't like standing in front of a mirror and changing positions and directions and getting all nice and nifty. I'm more concerned about testosterone. I'm more concerned about dopamine and other positive benefits of the brain and body for the mind. And some of the risk involved with this process has to do with the system in place. The system of how are you doing? You were sick a while ago. Are you feeling any better? The spaced out return phone call, the filled up mailbox for the contact at the health business, the organization for mental wellness. A person who doesn't call a person back for over a week, a person who has a full mailbox so a client, a patient cannot call them and ask them a question or try to solve some problem. Has to acknowledge the dysfunction already occurring. And then there's interaction, and then there's communication, and then there's progress. But the system with the processes of the professional, of the social worker, of the counselor, of the psychiatrist, of the psychologist, of the supervisor, of the receptionist, of the day center treatment contact person, are a social way of looking at these different chemicals: testosterone, dopamine, cortisol. And not as much about a brain, body, and mind trying to get well and be healthy and strong. They're taking community, they're taking nice people, they're taking people into duress, and they are all working together to get healthy and well and have good body, brain, and a mind. And where this gets to be tricky is when I'm standing next to a person who's a recovered drug addict, when I'm standing next to a person who doesn't take the time to use the kitchen in their home, the person who goes and buys the least amount of nutrition required to be consciously alive, the person who listens to their stereo all night, hits the dosh garn window, door, and wall, saying don't use your heat or else they'll hit the wall too. And that person that I'm talking about now, being in the same category with the same goals and the same aspirations as myself, and making my dreams of MIT and making my wolf on my wall scary and confused for the benefit of the greater good. But still not defeating the motivation and the inspiration, and not totally silencing the brain and mind to get the body, brain, and the mind more controlled, more focused, more concentrated, and more behaviorally okay. Cortisol always freaked me out. I'd get a bully come up to me and start messing with me and picking on me. I'd get cortisol. I'd get afraid. I'd get tense. I'd get scared. I'd get energetic, and I'd go away. I'd avoid the negativity. I'd avoid the danger. And where the sadness and the death and the dying start to become the end of suffering has to do with not being able to get away anymore, and flat out required to have these naturally occurring chemicals checked whenever, looked at, stared at, analyzed, and interpreted. There's difficulty without a pandemic, coronavirus occurring now in the world. To speak to the woman who's in charge and say, no, I need to make progress and I don't want you to touch my body and I don't want you to freaking screw with my brain anymore, so I have to start saying bad words and I have to have force for defensive restraint. For the simple reason I don't want to just say enough's enough and go be homeless and just go be some stupid, hungry, and depressed beggar for more money. And the frustration with having to describe and having to give an image similar to what I'm being given chemically. Charge. Psychology and psychiatry. Rather than social benefit paperwork getting finished, completed, wellness like grocery shopping, emergency supplies for not only now in the pandemic coronavirus, but for earthquakes and natural disasters where they say you need so much water, so much food. And being treated as if I'm the wolf, an animal who doesn't need to be prepared, who only needs to be okay to survive in these kinds of situations, in these kinds of examples. And death and dying become the sadness because in an earthquake, getting an emotional phone call to check in on me, to see how I'm doing emotionally, physically with my health, and mentally with my chemicals, doesn't feed the body, doesn't give the brain vitamins, doesn't give the mouth water. They give more information, more data. And then another appointment at another time. These are almost three-dimensional examples. Thinking so complex and so smart and intelligent, a hand tries to imitate to not get in the way of these processes and this system of care. So my cortisol, my hormones don't just appear like the camouflage on the wall, dispersed, sporadic, low, high, and depleted.